Hello, I'm Bill Tro, a consultant working with the South Dakota DOT study team. The focus area for this portion of the Context-Sensitive Corridors public meeting series is US 85 in lead to the junction of US 385 at Pluma. This corridor differs from other study corridors in that at less than a mile, it is much shorter than the others, and it is located in a more urban setting. Of the three functional categories of commuter commercial, destination, or destination access, this corridor's primary function is to support commuter and commercial travel needs. The route provides a primary access between Lead and Deadwood for a broad range of trip purposes, including goods movement and supporting employment trips for people living in one community and working in the other. Actions proposed in this phase of the study reflect needs identified in earlier stages through input gathered at public meetings, working with DOT staff, and discussion with agencies with interest along the corridor. Action alternatives reviewed for the corridor address the following needs. First, better accommodation of pedestrian and bicycle travel. The corridor is the primary connector between Lead and Deadwood, and the proximity of the two communities makes walking and bicycling between them a viable transportation option. To more safely accommodate pedestrians, bicycles, and vehicles, options for widening the shoulder area and options for separating bikes and pedestrians from the travel lanes have been developed. Second, crash rate reduction. Over the analysis period, the number of crashes observed in the corridor are higher than the average for similar corridors based on setting and traffic. The lines in these displays show the range of expected crashes for similar corridors. The chart on the left represents all crash types, and the one on the right covers severe crashes only. The red lines display the upper expected level, the gray line, the lower level of expected crashes based on volume, and the middle line is the average crash rate based on volume and setting. Corridor 4, shown as the dot, has experienced crashes that exceed the average, and for severe crashes is near the top of the range for similar corridors. The types of crashes observed can be reduced or alleviated through design improvements such as adding wider shoulder or adding guardrail, with the expectation that the rate can be lowered to be consistent with the average for similar corridors. For each of the identified needs, we have developed improvement alternatives that balance meeting the need with the level of impact to the adjacent environment and considers cost. Through this next portion of the meeting, we will focus on each of the alternatives being studied. The displays we will be using represent cross sections for various alternatives looking from Lead toward Pluma. To be consistent with design guidelines, the concept for the corridor from the east edge of Gold Run Park to US 385 at Pluma would provide at least a 5-foot shoulder within a 7 to 10-foot buffer or clear zone that is measured from the edge of the travel lane. For each alternative, improvements resulted in a wider cross-section relative to the current, with most, if not all, of the widening occurring to the north. This takes advantage of the existing South Dakota DOT-owned right-of-way to the north and avoids impacts to Gold Run Creek to the south. The first option reflects the more traditional South Dakota DOT concept for accommodating pedestrians and bicycle travel in rural areas, which is to provide a paved 5-foot shoulder in both directions. The 5-foot width shown is based on the design speed, with shoulder widths increasing with speed. At 35 miles per hour, at a 35 mile an hour design speed for the US 85 corridor, a shoulder width of at least 5 feet is the goal, and the shoulder would be included within a 7 to 10 foot clear zone or buffer that is clear of obstructions such as trees. Providing a 5-foot shoulder would result in shifting the roadbed approximately 5 feet to the north, which requires cutting into the rock face where it exists or removing material from the north side of the corridor from 0.2 of a mile from the edge of Lead to US 385 at Pluma. The benefit of shifting the alignment to the north is that most, if not all, of the existing segments of guardrail can be removed, as adequate separation for recovery would be provided between the road and Gold Run Creek. The attached summary table highlights the safety improvements and adjacent impacts and costs. The information in the table can be directly compared to other corridor 4 options, as well as the analysis for other corridors, where detailed context-sensitive improvements have been reviewed. The second option, enhancing accommodation in the corridor for pedestrians and bicyclists intended to support the expectation there is unmet demand for travel between Lead and Deadwood. Improvements to support enhanced safety for walkers and bicyclists include a 10-foot wide two-way multi-use path on the south side separated from the travel lanes by guardrail. The guardrail adds a factor of safety for pedestrians and bicyclists as setback from the road is minimal. As can be observed in the cross-section, the multi-use trail would be located on the current eastbound lanes and the vehicle lanes would be shifted to the north. The shift would result in substantial impact to the north side rock face of 15 to 20 feet of cut. The benefits and impacts of the alternatives are summarized in the attached table. The level of impact to the rock face will substantially increase the cost relative to option number 1. Option number 3 is providing enhanced bicycle and pedestrian accommodation in the US 85 corridor introduces safety concerns for people walking or bicycling in the corridor where trucks and autos are also traveling. The proximity of Lead and Deadwood heightens the concern as the distance is short enough for families to want to make the trip by biking or walking, which adds children and pets to the corridor users, which elevates the sensitivity for safety and also adds some unpredictability to the user. To provide for the assumed need or desire for pedestrian and or bicycle connection and reduce the exposure to risk, a cross-section option that locates pedestrians and bicyclists away from the road has been included in the range of options. The surrounding terrain and proximity to Gold Run Creek makes it difficult to widen the section along the current US 85 alignment to provide enough separation between travel modes without guardrail. Thus, option 3 was developed that moved the multi-use trail element to the south side of Gold Run Creek. It should be emphasized with this option that the alignment of the trail concept paralleling the road and the creek is on private property that would need to be acquired to advance the concept. Whether or not there is interest on the part of the owner to sell has not been investigated at this point in the study. Vehicle travel elements of this option would be retained in the current corridor and would have the same physical needs as option 1. The travel lanes would need to be shifted 5 feet to the north, and the 7 to 10 foot clear zone or buffer would be established from the edge of the travel lane, including removing a portion of the north side rock face to provide the area needed. Pedestrians and bicyclists would be accommodated along a 10-foot wide trail that would require cuts of 15 to 20 feet into the rock area on the south side of the creek. The trail section would start at Gold Run Park and travel along the creek alignment to US 385 and the junction at the Mickelson Trail. An added level of consideration in this option is separating impacts by mode between the current alignment and the trail, and whether there is support or the need that is consistent with the impact. A key purpose of this meeting is to gather input regarding potential use relative to the cost and private ownership impacts. An initial environmental scan has been completed to understand current environmental resources that could be impacted by the proposed improvements and set the stage for future environmental analysis and clearance processes. Resources present along the current corridor include wetlands, potential historic structures such as the trestle sign, and visual resources. The results of the evaluation relative to the same criteria as the other options are shown here. All of the options proposed are consistent with the corridor vision as a commercial commuter corridor in that they improve accommodation for all modes relative to the current. Additionally, all of the alternatives proposed meet South Dakota DOT design guidelines. Environmental and property impacts for each of the alternatives reflect modest to a substantial level of impact due to the amount of rock and fill that would need to be removed. Property impacts of option 3 are substantial, as the multi-use trail element is located outside South Dakota DOT right-of-way. From a cost perspective, the construction cost per mile for each of the options is higher due to the need to remove rock to establish the area to construct shoulder and/or the multi-use path. Thank you for viewing this presentation. To learn more about Corridor 4 improvements, click here to review and comment button located below the video. This will take you to the segment map within Corridor 4, where you can click on a particular area to view proposed improvement concepts. Once you reach the detailed information, please click on the dashed box to review and provide feedback. We look forward to hearing from you.